in recreational play, or sometimes in the lower end quality of players, what generally tends to happen is players tend to back up and then they expose your feet.
Paddles up and welcome to episode 20. That's right, episode 20 of the Pickleball Gurus podcast. I'm Randy Manaply, and I'm here with Prem Carnot, the Pickleball Guru, the world's premier pickleball coach and author of two best-selling books, Smart Pickleball and Drop Shot Till You Drop.
Hi, Guru Nation. Welcome. Hope you are all staying safe and at home whenever you can. And I'm sure you're all eager to get back to the pickleball court. So welcome.
Two major announcements are coming up, but first, this episode is called Get Your Dink On. Jeff, who you also know from Pickleball University, came to one of your clinics and mentioned he dinked more at the clinic than he had in a year or maybe even his whole life of pickleball. I infer from this there's not a whole lot of dinking going on in rec play. What's up with that, Prem?
Well, in rec play, people were trying to have fun, and that's the best they know of, and they try to dink with as little as possible because they just want to smash the ball and just want to get some workout however they can. And the players who are a little bit more competitive are the people who really would like to improve the consistency in their game, try to look at what other players do or what better players do, or players who have a better quality of pickleball. And generally they realize that dinking is becoming a very essential part of the game, and so they start becoming more aware of it. And so in a place like a boot camp where I'm there to enhance their skill sets, dinking is a really big part of getting them more ready for a broader spectrum of smarter pickleball.
So you think that dinking is where the action is? That's where the real game is played, Prem. Why is that?
I think the game is won and lost mostly at the non-volley zone line. It's a very important zone where the team which dominates wins it. So the best possible type of play you could probably have in the non-volley zone is a dinking game. So that's a very effective place to be, because you force your opponent to do a certain number of things, and they try to do the same to you.
So the game is won and lost at the line. And you often point out that you should make most of your shots that buy you time. And one of the things I point out is that the first 4 of your 7 principles of Smart Pickleball, in addition to buying you time, are also designed to get you and your partner to the line. Serve deep, number 1, return deep, number 2. The third is specifically get to the line fast, and the fourth being the drop shot. How do these shots get you to the line as fast as possible? You can forget about the third one, since that's get to the line fast anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The serve, hitting a nice deep serve allows you to sort of reset and wait for what your opponents are going to do. Remember, I talk about this in my Smart Pickleball, is like when you serve deep in a more higher loopy fashion, it allows you to reset yourself, because it also allows you to see what your opponents are going to do by looking at their leading shoulder, and that's an important part of sort of resetting yourself, and gives you time to do that. Same with the return of the serve. When you're returning a serve, if you do it a loopy, knowing that the serving team has to let the ball bounce, and you have ample time to amble yourself to the non-volley zone line. So those are two important things. Then once that is done, the serving team wants to get to the kitchen line. Their best options are, at that point, we've talked about it in many podcasts and articles, is to probably try and drop it. If your opponents are at the kitchen line, then you try and do a drop shot. And the key to hitting a good drop shot is obviously to try and hit it where your opponent has to wait for the ball to bounce at the kitchen line. And if they wait for the ball to bounce in the kitchen line, it gives you enough time to get to the kitchen line. And from that point, the team which dominates that line effectively become probably the most effective team to score.
So now you and your partner are at the line, your opponents are at the line. Why not lob or just drive the ball?
You could probably try lobbing. And again, I'm a very big proponent of what you call an offensive lob. It is when you're dinking out there and all of a sudden you throw the surprise package of lobbing. That would be a more effective one. But lobbing right off the bat, you might probably miss it. And if it is not, chances of trying to hit it over them can be quickly seen, and then you can get it smashed at. So, and then trying to drive a ball generally from that position, if the ball is lower than the net, and if you're trying to drive the ball, chances are you're going to hit it into the net, or it's probably going to be a chain link ball, meaning that it would probably be hitting the fence. If you're probably aiming for someone's body, and if they're a better player, they will start blocking it, and it doesn't allow you to do that. And I'm sure you've heard this one before, Randy, about statistics around people who try to drive balls. Have you?
Yeah, that's what I was leading up to now. Because what you see a lot of players doing, especially in rec play, is speeding up the ball.
Hmm.
And I was going to ask, are they intentionally speeding up the ball, or are they trying to get their dinks deep into the kitchen at their opponent's feet?
What I was saying is that driving the ball down, it might be intentional at some point, or it might not be intentional. Sometimes it's just because players are not so driven by they're not driven really by they're just lazy to keep the dinks going, and they probably want to just drive the ball. And some people obviously would like to target the feet, and that's a question of impatience, I would say, rather than wanting to continue to wait for the opportunity to drive the ball.
And you think, going back to aiming for the feet, you don't think it's particularly the best strategy to go for the feet. Why is that, Prem?
I'm not completely sure if that is actually a true statement. Feet as it is a very to go if you can, but as you improve as a player, most players would probably take those balls which are coming to the feet. They will probably capture that ball more earlier, which does not allow you to get to the feet. Uh, in recreational play, or sometimes in the lower end quality of players, what generally tends to happen is players tend to back up and then they expose your feet. And there's a simple way of looking at it. Like if you're at the net, at the kitchen line, and you're looking at someone's feet over the net, um, chances are from the kitchen line, if the person is standing at the kitchen line, you hardly are going to see the feet. There's no way you can see the feet. You probably see through the net, but over the net line, where the ball has to travel, you will probably never see the feet. But as the person moves backwards, further backwards from that kitchen line, then all of a sudden you start seeing the feet. That already indicates you that they're not at the line anymore. Then driving to their feet is a very effective strategy, but not forcefully at the kitchen line, because you really can't see the feet when you're at the kitchen line.
And so if you're
Then
going for the feet while they're at the kitchen line, essentially the other player, because of the arc of the ball, if it's going for their feet, they can probably take the ball in the air.
that's right. That's one of the reasons why I normally don't recommend people backing up, because when you back up is when they can get to see you more of your feet. Otherwise, if they take it in the air, take all those balls in the air as much as possible. It actually takes time away from your opponent. Again, time is essential there. It's the key component of everything I teach about in philosophy, in the smart pickleball philosophy.
And let's get to the meat of it here. Instead of going for the feet when you're at the line trying to dink, you think the dink should be more shallow. Just how shallow should they be into the kitchen?
I would normally recommend the dink to be more at the first quadrant, or the first half of the non-volley zone line. So if you have a 700-foot line, 7-foot line, 3.5 feet is probably the best place to dink to, and I'm sure you can remind what we do at the boot camp, Randy.
Yeah, we could bring out some painter's tape and mark off those 3.5 feet.
Hmm.
Um, and then we force everyone to dink into that. Typically, I think we start off with like 30 dinks, and then we make them do 50 dinks in that shallow part of the kitchen. And if they get it out of that shallow part of the kitchen, even though it's in the kitchen, they have to start back over.
Yes, and one of the things I would really insist on is the question is not about only about dinking 50, 30, 40, 100 times. You can go ask any number of good players or any competitive player or pro players out there. Or what they do is they drill so much, they try and get more effective and more consistent with the quality of dinkings they do or the quality of shots they drive. So it brings in the question is more of trying to get more muscle memory into our players so that they can enjoy the consistency of hitting an ideal dink, be it straight up or be it cross court.
And they get pretty proficient at getting them in that shallow part of the kitchen after all that dinking. And you recommend this for drops also. And I preface this because I sent you a video where Renison said it's fake news that drops need to land in the shallow part of the kitchen. He shows a lot of the pros in their drops. And your response is?
My response to it, it's probably I'd recommend trying to hit as much as possible, forcing opponents to hit it. But again, are we talking about pros or are we talking about most players who are not as proficient as that? It is trying to get as close as possible. The pros, they might hit it, but they have the reset point even if they hit a bad drop. And I'm not completely sure that almost everyone else has that reset aspect of the game. So that's where I think people like Mark and me are there to help them to know how to reset it if they do that. But ideally, it is better to start off being more efficient and trying to drop more effectively so that they don't have to deal with more of the other complications. But we obviously have to give them the other aspects too.
And in the comments, he mentions that you'll see pro players very rarely hit their dinks in the first half of the kitchen. He mentions that it's usually just off a net cord by an opponent. But the end result of both philosophies are the same. And Mark mentions that in his video. Either way, you're trying to get your opponent to hit up on the ball.
That is true. But even if the opponents, if in the pro divisions, when you look at players who are hit dinking cross court and it's a little bit more deeper than shallow, generally it's a cross court one. And the most important thing is when they're doing cross court, the ball is actually moving away from them. It might so which forces them to having to slice the ball back again, and it is actually much more safer to do so, and they would probably never hardly go in front of them because the risk of getting ernied is a big one. So they would go cross court. There's a lot of safety in hitting a cross court dink, even if it is a little bit more deeper. It is actually still pushing the player to move sideways and slice the ball back. So there's a lot of safety in that, even if it's a little deeper than the shallow part. But if you're going straight up, that's your best option. Or if you're going even to the middle, it's better to have it more shallow than trying to have it deeper because you might be waiting for the drive coming up soon.
So for dinks, assuming that you're doing everything right and getting it into the shallow part of the kitchen, you're forcing your opponent to do two things. One, like we talked about, hit up on the ball, and two, step into the kitchen. We kind of talked about hitting up on the ball earlier. Why is it important to force them to step into the kitchen?
By forcing instant, again, the time which we talk about, having a quality time to try and reset yourself is an important part so that you can reset your position, reset yourself into ready position. It allows you time as an opponent steps into and it forces them to hit the ball up rather than down towards your feet or down towards you to your body or anything like that. But allowing them to step in allows you time, allows you to reset yourself. Reset, what I mean is to get your paddle out, get into position, be in front of the ball of the action. All this will help you.
So there's the whys of getting your dink shallow. Talk about the hows.
How do you get your ding shallows?
Yeah.
Well, that's as you popularly would say that in boot camps, Randy. It's all about the bending the knees. Um, how do you, when I say that, I simply mean is that there's a very important part of getting down to the ball and able to scoop the ball rather than try to drive the ball. What's the difference between a scooping and a driving? It's very simple. When you're driving a ball, your arch of the bat paddle is behind you, and you're bringing it up. And so normally, when you try to do that, it accelerates the speed of the ball. Whereas when you're scooping a ball, you're bending the knees, and you're literally uh, assisting the ball over the net on the other side, and that it's basically you're just scooping the ball and dropping it on the other side of the net, and that allows you a lot of softness to it and less aggressive approach from your opponent. So
In other
that's
words,
the key.
there's no power coming from your arm. All your power comes from your leg.
Absolutely, that is definitely true. So that's why bending your knees is coming up. So lowering down yourself to where the ball is bouncing, and then literally taking the ball off the bounce and scooping it and putting it on the other side with no arm. It's basically it's like a sit up action. It's like you're scooping, you're sitting and scooping and coming up, and along with the ball is basically what it is all about.
It's almost like picking something up heavy. You're supposed to bend with the knees when you pick something up heavy, just the same way when you're picking up the dink off the ground.
That's a great visual, Randy. It's like as if you're just bending to take a ball and then throw a ball with your arm, or you're bending down all the way down and coming up. In fact, any physical therapist will tell you, when you're lifting stuff or you're scooping stuff or anything like that, going down to your legs and coming up is a much more healthier way to do it, less uh, traumatic to your lower backs when you go down and come back, rather than just trying to bend and just pick up the ball, which basically means like you're driving the ball.
Excellent. Thank you, Prem. And we have two major announcements right now. The first major announcement you have is a new program that's starting in January. Tell us about that, Prem.
Well, a lot of our viewers and participants and people who have been listening to us for many years had asked for it, and so we were looking at how to craft, the boot camp breakthrough experience we have had which we have for 4 days, which is much more intense, and something which uh, they would want to have that experience would probably less time consuming, and some less money too. And so we were trying to figure out what would be the best way to do it. And so from that came this wonderful idea of calling the bootcamp express, which is basically a 2-day experience rather than 4 days. Instead of 2, 3 or 4, we have 2. We get a lot of things from the pickleball bootcamp breakthrough experience into this express experience. A lot of these concepts are there, and there's some added versions of it. Like, if people want more, then they can get more, but that'll be um, you get to do a lot of live play actions and trying to strategize and analyze it, and also drills and skills and strategies are emphasized on these boot camps. So I think we've just what we are offering is mostly an experience which is a shortened version of the boot camp experience, but not itself the experience itself. The experience will remain as rich as a boot camp experience. Um, what's the biggest difference between a bootcamp express and a bootcamp breakthrough is it's a sort of um, getting the concentrated version of the bootcamp breakthrough experience into a bootcamp express in 2 days, and able to emphasize on those pieces. So that's the biggest difference, and obviously the price money is a lot different. So we are offering it at what are we offering at, Randy?
$597. But because it's the launch and it's a new program, If you use coupon code EXPRESS, you get
Uh-huh.
$100 off. So
So that,
$497.
so yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be still, Bootcamp Express will have a 1 to 8 ratio coaches, 2 coaches who will work with, along with me, will work with me. And so that we'll be able to give you a great experience. It's a maximum of 16 people in that. So that's the biggest announcement. And we're going to launch it in Vero Beach, Florida in January.
Yep, January 13th and 14th is the first session, and the second session, I believe, is January 16th and 17th. The second major announcement is
That's
we
right.
finished, thank you, is we finished the first draft of the entire book.
That's right.
Initially,
That's
we were going to issue a
very,
bunch of little ebooks, but then we decided that there was such a demand for the actual paper version of it that we figured we'd go ahead and finish the whole thing. And the first draft is done.
yes, it's a very exciting news. I have to thank Randy entirely for that, because it was a lot of work from Randy himself, who had put in place the book. But it's basically just like we did with our Smart Pickleball. It's a elaboration of everything we do in the boot camp from day 1 to day 4. It's a run through, but it's all the strategies which are discussed. So I know a lot of people who like to come to a boot camp, but we only have 8 spots in those boot camps, and it's limited so much. So we decided that we would like to give that access to people who cannot come to these boot camps or cannot afford it. Then let them have that experience by reading through pretty much everything, every secret which is revealed during the boot camps in this book.
And speaking of boot camps, if you're interested in coming to one of our boot camps, we have one spot open for Richmond, which is coming up at the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Kansas City in July, Charlotte in indoor courts in August, Denver in late September, Sacramento in October, Tucson with only 2 spots remaining in November, Costa Rica in December is already discounted, so other boot camp promotions are not included. And then 3 boot camps in Vero Beach to choose from, 2 in January and 1 in February, in addition to our Boot Camp Express. There's another 2 that you can choose from. For any of the upcoming boot camps, not the Boot Camp Express, use coupon code PODCAST by July 1st for $500 off, except again for the Costa Rica boot camp, which I already mentioned is heavily discounted. And that's our boot camps, but like Jeff mentioned, there's a whole lot of dinking going on at clinics. Prem, talk about clinics for a second. You talked about Boot Camp Express and boot camps. How does a clinic differentiate a bit between the other 2 programs that you have?
Well, interesting. I've become a salesperson for for all these events. The clinics are very worked on fundamentals, basically, because it's a focus on all the fundamentals, because every part of the pickleball foundation starts from mastering the fundamentals of the game, how, what an ideal serve. We sort of explore everything about what an ideal serve looks like, an ideal um, I, return of serve looks like, a drop shot, an ideal dink, and trying to get a little bit more efficient in all those aspects, and then how to play through those, and focus on trying to build the foundations and get some consistency and understanding. Again, I'll always remind all the viewers and listeners here that I never proclaim or never claim that this is the only way to do it and this is the effective way to do it. It's one way. It's not the way to do it. So there's absolutely no pressure of that trying to say that this is the only effective way. Here are a few suggestions I would give, and we will work on those things. And the clinics are such a wonderful experience for people who just want to get the fundamentals right in and get practice and get hone their skills, so that they can move on to the next phase, be it the bootcamp express or the bootcamp breakthrough experience. So it's a great foundation from it and launch into the next quality of play they would like to go and become And that's all I really want to talk about clinics.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll mention is that Boot Camp and Boot Camp Express, that's for the 3.0 to 4.0 rated players, while
Uh-huh.
Clinic is mainly for the under 3.5 rated players.
That's right. It's mostly because we are trying to really work on the fundamentals. For people who have already mastered certain quality of fundamentals, then Bootcamps Express and Bootcamp Breakthrough experiences are a great ramp up. Whereas the clinic is basically trying to work on for the lower to beginner to intermediate players who are trying to get their game going in some consistent manner before they can move into higher echelons of the game.
Excellent. Thank you, Prem. And finally, if you haven't done so, I would encourage you to head over to pickleballguru.com and become a member of Guru Nation. No cost whatsoever to join, meaning absolutely free. And speaking of free, when you sign up, you'll receive your brand new toolkit, 5 tools you need to take your game to the next level. You'll also receive the 5 biggest mistakes racket players make and how to correct them. You'll also receive the Guru's ratings and goals guide, all of this absolutely free. And while at pickleballguru.com, check out the plethora of strategies, tips, and tricks on the blog, from playing against bangers to stacking to drops. As I mentioned, joining Guru Nation is free, and you can also check out some long-form webinars about why the middle is so important, dancing with your partner communication, and much more. At our gear page, you can get a smart pickleball t-shirt, like the one Prem is wearing, a Pickleball Guru baseball cap, also like Prem is wearing, or a sling pack, as well as other fun and cool like pickleball t-shirts and gear, like my favorite Dink t-shirt. And if you want the best prices for your custom designed pickleball tournament or club, you can email Dink at sales@dinkt.com. Links to all this is available in the show notes, plus upcoming clinics, boot camps, and Boot Camp Express. As I mentioned, for any of the upcoming boot camps, use coupon code podcast for July 1st for $500 off. For Boot Camp Express, use coupon code EXPRESS for $100 off your launch price. So a bunch of free stuff plus a huge discount on boot camps and Boot Camp Express for that matter. Anything else, Prem? Anything
Nothing
else,
else,
Prem?
as usual. Once the nothing else, Randy. I know that certain places of pickleball is yet to be open, but I know like you're all earning to get back there on those courts. And when you do, please still stay safe and practice social distancing as much as possible, or at least have a good quality of cleanliness, or keep your hands clean and so I would definitely recommend that. But other than that, when you get on the courts, just go have fun on those pickleball courts, and remember, it's only pickleball.
All right. Thanks, Prem. Stay safe and take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.